That time I got reincarnated as a slime. This is part 1 of season 1. This is a anime series that I've really wanted to be checking out in a while. Have the library just got it. They'll have part 2 soon, so this will just be a review for the first couple episodes, the first 12 episodes. But this is about Satoru. He is a 37-year-old virgin, salaryman, walking down the street with his friends. However, a random man stabs him, and he ends up going to the afterlife. But instead of going to the afterlife, it ends up going, he's reincarnated in this fantasy world as a slime. However, he's got a lot of power. He's not just a slime like a low-level video game villain. He's a slime who can eat other people and then absorb their abilities. He can also store unlimited things inside of him. He ends up being very overpowered for some reason. He's also got like resistance to fire and ice and other things, and he can learn all this stuff while he's sitting in this cave by himself, and then he meets a dragon. So this anime can really be compared to Overlord. It's very similar, because Overlord's the exact same. It's about like a guy, well, it's not the same. In this one, in Slime, he's reincarnated as a slime. He's there physically. In Overlord, the main character is sucked into a video game when it's supposed to be put offline, but everything remains the same as a video game. However, there's an interesting, darker element to Overlord where he's sort of pretending to be the Overlord, and he can't tell any of his underlings, and he slowly becomes more villainous over time. This one's very different. It's like the little kid brother version, because he becomes Rimuru, that's the name, and he becomes superpowered because the dragon does something to him that allows him to sort of be part of the same family, and he starts giving names to goblins and little things like that. He starts building up his own sort of army, but they do good. So it's kind of like, you know, a lighter version of Overlord. I felt that the stakes and tension were really low though, because Rimuru is so powerful that no one can really stop him, except for maybe a big boss battle in episode 7. But the characters are fun. There's a lot of interesting moments. The world building is really nice too. They slowly dole stuff out and introduce other characters. There's a king character who knows that the slime is dangerous, so he's sort of like, keep an eye on him. So the 12 episodes leaves on a cliffhanger. There's like a lizard gang. Yeah, the lizard gang was very similar to Overlord too. There's a lot of similarities. People make the comparison. So far, I'm not in love with That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. It's okay so far. I'll give the other half a go. And if I enjoy it, then I'll continue with season 2, which releases this year on DVD. But overall, so far, as a first sampler, it's simply okay. It's enjoyable. There's some funny moments, but it's a very lighthearted, low-stakes anime, and that's all right. That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, season 1, part 2 is the second half of the first season. I watched the first one a little while ago. This second half is 12 episodes, and it covers 3 different story arcs. The first one being the climax cliffhanger that you didn't get if you watched the first half of the first season, involving the orcs and their invasion of the lizard men and what, you know, who's behind them and everything. It was a pretty decent battle. You know, 2 episodes. They build up to it pretty nicely. Lots of action, smooth animation. The second arc is a grudge involving the demon lords, and there's this guy who wants to. He's basically manipulated into obtaining the power of an ancient being, which ends really abruptly. And same goes for the third arc, in which Rimuru has to fulfill a promise to someone, and then go to this other city and basically foster in these children who are doomed to die because of the way they were brought into this world when they died. So they have the same sort of situation that he does, but he's got the powers. I think the biggest problem with this series is that it's very wholesome and fun, but it's a little bit too low stakes, and the main character is simply too overpowered, because, you know, they bring in this great threat. You're like, oh no, everything's going, you know, nuts. There's a new threat, and then it's equivalent of him taking out the recycling. It's very, you know, barely an inconvenience. You know, he just goes like this, and then the guy's done. And then, so that you never feel like Rimuru has a challenge or a threat. You know, he's always trying to make friends. So whenever a threat does come along, you know, he manages to either defeat them or recruit them. So you know, it's kind of like Spy Kids, where every movie you go in, the villain from the last one is an ally now. They're reformed or they're in prison or whatever. So it's kind of weird in that regard, because there's not a lot of conflict. It's very binary. It's like, you know, you're a villainous, you know, weasel, but now you're not. And then, you know, they do introduce the main threat in the last episode, like some backstory of where he came from, and he's going to be the overarching sort of villain. But it takes a while to get there, and it's very, you know, left me with kind of like fantasy blue balls, because every time they have a big threat or a big arc, there isn't unique, you know, choreography or like a way for our hero to defeat them. It's just kind of like a wave of the hand and they're done. And it kind of it sucks a lot of tension out of the story, for one thing, you know, because he's just so overpowered. Yeah, so I don't think I'll continue with this show. There is a season 2 that came out recently, and there's season 3 will eventually come out, but it's a little bit too lacking in terms of tension, and I don't mind the characters, but everything just seems a little bit too, you know, shallow, and you know, it's not a big deal, but definitely, you know, I gave it a fair shot. I watched the whole first season, so those are my thoughts on my that time I got reincarnated as a slime.